You are Locked On Bulldogs Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Georgia Squad Show, your home for the best Georgia Bulldogs talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are college football analyst Jarvis Davis and Locked On's SEC expert Jay Smith. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And our Locked On Georgia Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the new year didn't start off right for UGA. We'll discuss and we'll debate on what didn't go right for this defense and where Kirby and company go from here. But first, let's talk about a matchup that wasn't so favorable for the Dogs. Now, Gunnar Stockton's first half saw him fumble twice. One led to a punt, one led to a touchdown, but ultimately he had a respectable finish, we'll say. He finished the game going 18 of 29, 225 yards, and a touchdown, although he was minus 16 on the ground. But ultimately speaking, Jarvis, when you look at how this game played out with Gunnar Stockton under center, you know the big question is going to be, did the Dogs ultimately miss Carson Beck in this 23-10 loss to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish?
I think so. Let me say this. I think Gunnar Stockton did a much better job than I thought he was, because coming into this game, I did not trust him throwing the football. I felt like he was a guy that kind of showed, to me that he can't necessarily be consistent in that area. And I think that when he had opportunity to throw the football and had time, I feel like he was able to kind of prove like, hey, I can actually get us through this game if the offensive line, was able to hold up, but that wasn't necessarily the case. But I think the big thing in this game was the fact that they weren't able to get that running game going. And that came true as far as what I expected from the team. I was like, if Georgia wasn't able to run the football like we're used to, I just knew that Gunnar Stockton wasn't going to be able to get the job done, putting his team on his back and trying to get to the semifinals.
And Jay, before I go to you on that question, kind of getting your thoughts on Stockton versus Carson Beck, Jarvis, I want to follow up with you. Do you think that there was anything, because of course we knew this was also going to be a game with the run game that needed to be won in the trenches, but admittedly you saw Georgia kind of have some issues where Ernest Green had to go to right tackle, Xavier Truss had to go to left. Did that also have an impact, especially with them going down so early, in the ability to kind of give Gunnar Stockton the type of protection he needed, or make those those run lanes open for the running back core?
Yeah, and you think that, with Mills being out, the big boy defensive tackle for Notre Dame, and you would have thought, and then Howard Cross ended up going out as well. So you would have thought they wouldn't be able to get something going early on. But it was just the way Alden Golden, I got to give him some respect as far as what his game plan was, because he was basically daring Gunnar Stockton to beat him. He was like, hey, man, we're going to have safeties in the box. We're going to have the linebackers up in the line of scrimmage. We're playing man coverage, sir. So you need to do something about it. And they just could not figure it out. I feel like Mike Bobo was just like, hey, man, you gotta get back them up off you, dude, because if they're not giving it up in the running game, you got to at least throw it to at least get those guys, get some room in the run game.
Yeah. And when you look at this game, Jay, you kind of take a step back with the big question. It's going to be kind of an elephant in the room. Georgia announced, of course, about two or so weeks ago that, hey, there would be no Carson Beck in this quarterfinal game. And there was probably a collective gasp in Athens, Georgia. But for you, was it really something where you said, man, if only Carson Beck would have played this game, might have ended differently?
Honestly, I don't know if it would have got any different with Carson Beck out there on the field. I mean, no disrespect to Georgia or anybody out there, but the one thing that we've done to Notre Dame is we've kind of chastised them this entire season based upon the schedule that they played and the games they played. Sure. But the way that Notre Dame played against Texas A&M to start the season kind of reminded me of this game. They were very physical. They were pushing everybody around, and Georgia could not stop them when it came from the pass rush. They kept Stockton just busy. And if you think about it with Carson Beck, it probably would have been the same thing. He would have had happy feet. He'd been getting rid of the ball. But we talked about this in the green room. got to catch the ball, though, when it comes to your hands. That, to me, is a bigger issue, if anything, is that just this year, wide receivers can't figure out how to hang on to the ball. And no matter if it's Gunnar Stockton or if it's Carson Beck, that was going to be a problem in this game.
Yeah, it was unbelievably frustrating because I felt like there were moments in time, and granted, I know that, like you said, Dylan Bell was a little bit knocked around, if you will, so maybe that kind of got him off his, off his mark, but I honestly say the same. I don't think it would have mattered whether it was Stockton, Carson Beck, heck, DJ Shockley might have gone back out there and, attempted to do something. I don't really kind of know if it would have mattered because I really do think that Marcus Freeman, and like you said, Jarvis, I think that entire coaching staff said, I dare you to beat us in the air. And we know that you all are going to come out physical in the trenches, both on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball, but we're ready for you. And I think that's what I kind of saw that I don't know, maybe Georgia thought that that Notre Dame was going to do otherwise. Maybe, Jay, they missed that Texas A&M game. But that said, we do need to at least acknowledge the O-line and the fact that there was some shuffling that had to be done. And maybe that also could have contributed to why this Georgia team couldn't get that run game going.
I just think Notre Dame's defense was just better. They were just better. You talking about, being aggressive. Even Christian Gray, when he got dinged for a penalty, he still was playing aggressive. You saw that late in the fourth quarter. It felt like Notre Dame defense wanted it more. And I even tweeted out during the game at Jarvis United, by the way, if y'all want to check it out. I'm doing a little something on that when it comes to talking that ball, baby. And, when I was like, special teams and defense, Notre Dame was dominating. When it comes to winning football games on Saturdays and Sundays, all you got to do is win 2 out of 3 phases. And more than likely, you're going to put yourself in position to get a dub. And that's exactly what Marcus Freeman did. I thought it was very interesting when it was fourth and 1. They had overturned the spot right there on fourth in the fourth quarter right there. And I was like, man, they better watch out for the fake. And then when you saw them run out there, I was like, man, something's about to happen. And then next thing you know, boom, they get off the field, and they run the offense back out there. And then, of course, Kirby Smart, still kind of in that moment, and he runs his guys back out there. And then Jaylen Walker jumps off sides, get in the neutral zone, flag, first down. And I was like, yep, that was the game right there. It just goes to show you how, prepared Notre Dame was. And I think Marcus Freeman needs to get a lot more credit for beating Georgia and not necessarily saying, okay,
Georgia
all right, instead of Georgia losing this game. I think it's definitely the former.
Yeah, I would agree. And I felt like it was one of those games, Jay, where from beginning to end, there are times, especially, when you kind of cover this team on a weekly basis, as we all do, because SEC, Georgia, college football, but we particularly cover it here in this Southeastern Conference. And every week, except of course those 2 weeks, but even if we're talking about it in reality, even that Alabama game, so let's go ahead and throw that in. There was always that feeling that, okay, Georgia's on the ropes, but they're going to come back in the second half and they're going to do something, even in that game where they eventually lost to Bama. Jay, I just never felt like that. I felt like this was a game where, like Jarvis said, Notre Dame was in control from the opening kickoff to the end of regulation.
And what's crazy to even say that is Georgia only allowed 203 yards of total offense. Exactly. No, let me put that in perspective for you all. Georgia actually produced 294 yards of total offense, but they gave up only 203 and still could not find a way to get Notre Dame off the field in certain situations. Heck, let's take that special teams touchdown off. That return gone. Now we're looking at 16-10. No matter what, Georgia could not find a way to keep the ball moving consistently, and Notre Dame found a way to move it enough to burn just enough clock to get rid of the ball, punt it, and then force Georgia to do something. Georgia was doing some moves, but when it was critical and most important, they couldn't do anything. And I know we talk about Notre Dame and kind of how, the schedule and everything, but defensive efficiency wise, they're the number 2 defense in the country. Their defense is actually legit. Shout out to Marcus Freeman and what he's building at Notre Dame with a program where it's really hard to get people into the school. He's been able to keep that going. And all in all, I think the one thing that we have to point out in this game is Notre Dame literally walked in there and just muscled Georgia the whole game. And it's funny because when you look back at it, you talked about the Alabama game. That was one thing where you saw initially where Bama was doing to Georgia. It was pushing them around.
Yep.
Georgia tightened up, said, nah, you're not going to push us like that, punk us. And they started to push back, and then it became a shootout at the end, which is good. But in this one, Georgia had no answer for the muscle. They just kept pushing them around. Couldn't get the run game going. Heck, Riley Leonard threw for 88 yards. That tells you all you need to know about how this game went. It was just punching you down your throat the entire time. And how do you stop that besides trying to man up and push back? Georgia couldn't. And it's wild to me to think that Georgia, of all schools, could not find a way to muscle back Notre Dame.
Yeah, that was one that kind of disappointed me as well. And I thought to and the other thing was and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the second seg, but Georgia is also really great at making halftime adjustments. I don't know, Jarvis and Jay, if there was any halftime adjustment you could have made on the offensive side of the ball, but I'm going to ask you, could Mike Bobo have done anything, first of all, differently coming into the game with his game plan, but even at halftime, where this was still a game? 13-3 is not something that's insurmountable. Was there anything Bobo could have done differently to change the outcome of this game?
I think that I think I had some issues with some personnel situations, right? Because especially on the fourth down, you knew that Al was going to bring the pressure because he's been doing it. He was doing it. He was doing it all night. When you have to throw the ball down the field, he was going to bring pressure. So not having a guy like Cash Jones in there and having Trevor Etienne, who did not know where to go when it comes to the protection, and then he just leaves his spot, and then the linebacker just coming right behind him and puts Gunnar Stockton on the ground. So I feel like he wasn't prepared. I feel like he wasn't prepared, and I hate to say that because I feel like Mike Bobo has gotten a lot of criticism, throughout the year, obviously. But I think in this particular moment, I felt like he wasn't prepared. He did not have Gunnar Stockton prepared to say, "Hey, man, when you start to see these numbers, hey, you need to shift the protection this way," because we know Carson Beck. That was a moment where they probably missed Beck too, because Beck. He's seen it all. He might not make the right decision when he's throwing the football, but he's at least able to recognize pre-snap. Okay, I know I need to shift my protection this way if we're outnumbered on this side of the football. If I think these guys are coming, so I think overall Mike Bobo just didn't have Gunnar prepared because, like I said, I'm not blaming Gunnar for playing badly. He made some nice throws. I think he did just enough to not be blamed for this loss. But I think this coach, I put some of this on Mike Bobo for not having this guy prepared.
Yeah. I mean, the one way you need to prepare in this game is to just not get pushed around. I'm sorry. That's the only thing I keep going back to. Like, you know what this game reminded me of? This game reminded me of Alabama, Oklahoma earlier at the end of the season, right? The big knock on Oklahoma, besides the struggles of their offense, was that everybody was like, oh, I don't think they're SEC ready. So what Alabama did when they walked into Norman was like, oh, we're just going to push them around. They're not SEC ready. And they got punched in the mouth. That's exactly what Notre Dame did in this game. Everybody thinks, oh, okay, it's the big SEC. They usually have the big dudes. They're going to push you around. No. I don't believe adjustments could have helped in this game. They just kept running past dudes and pushing dudes around. Linemen getting pushed to the side, getting skipped over. That was just a punking. That's all it was. That's all you can say, dog. It really was they just walked in there. They took their food. They said, I'm going to eat your cornbread. And you just couldn't answer for it. You said, hey, I don't want my cornbread. You can have the cornbread. I'm good. Bobo just had to hand over the cornbread in this one because that's all they did was push him around. It's bananas that it was just that much of a muscle game.
Jay. Go ahead, Jarvis.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's amazing to me how we're talking about this game. I'm amazed.
Yes.
I never thought
I'm gonna go back to when Kirby first took this job. When he first took this job, he said we have to get bigger.
Yep.
We have to get bigger.
Yes.
And they were bigger than pretty much everyone that they went up against this year. But when you think about and they lost their best defensive lineman, 350-pound defensive tackle, like guys that caused havoc all year. And they still weren't able to move those guys off the spot. I'm telling you, this doesn't happen to Kirby. I promise you. This doesn't happen to Kirby. And for him to the way we're talking about this game just goes to show that, that SEC label it's not as prominent. It's
given
not
Saturday.
as scary as it used to be, because guess what? A lot of people thought it was going to go the opposite way. This NIL money, if I can go get $8 million from what, Duke, like the talent going to get spread out, and ain't nobody waiting in line no more. So I think this game it was eye opening. I'm sure for Kirby, because it let him know, like, hey, let's just stepping on the field ain't gonna work anymore.
No, and this is a requiem, no question about, like you said, Jarvis, not just what happened on the field today, but what it means for this team and this program for going forward. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, because on the other side of the ball, we are also accustomed to seeing some halftime adjustments that make things different in the second half. Don't know that we saw that today. We'll download on it next. This episode of the Locked On Georgia Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. So the NFL playoffs are almost here. We are in the final stages of the regular season, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I know betting on which players will score a touchdown is so much fun. How many points each team will score, that's pretty thrilling. And of course, right here in Atlanta, the question is, how will the Falcons end this season? Will they end it scoring touchdowns? Will Michael Penix Jr. get a passing touchdown? How will things play out against the Carolina Panthers in the final regular season game? So remember, you can bet there on who will win the game. You can bet on who will score a touchdown. FanDuel has all of those options for you and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL and also America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Jay, I'm going to start with you because you gave us to me, like the stat of the night. And that is, you're looking at Georgia and you're thinking 23-10, Notre Dame must have had 300 or 400 all-purpose yards. No, they barely got over the 200-yard mark of all-purpose yards. And yet, this was a dominant performance. Like I said before, one of the things that we talked about all season was giving such credit to Glenn Schumann and his staff for the ability for that defense to reset, no matter how sluggish they looked in the first half, how many major mistakes they made or whatever. I don't know about you, Jay, but I didn't see the halftime adjustments that I thought I would see, and B, for any halftime adjustments that happened, it just didn't even seem to matter anyway.
It did not at all. And he's pointing out here in the chat, this game did remind me a lot of that Ole Miss game as well, where it was just bodying people around, dropping touchdowns, missing up on first downs, like the pass interferences that were happening. It just felt like everything was just discombobulated for Georgia, and it shouldn't have. Because remember, this is Notre Dame. They're not built for this, right? That's what we've always been taught. This is always the thing that we've known, and that's the only reason why I point out how this was a muscle game, because we're not used to Notre Dame doing this, except for, again, they did it to Texas A&M to start the season, and A&M's a bigger team. And you're right, Jarvis. That's one thing Kirby Smart said. This team needs to get bigger. They need to get bigger. But the problem is just getting extra size doesn't help with athleticism. Like, all you're going to do is slow yourself down. And in a lot of situations, they look like they was out athlete the entire time. And so you need guys to be able to catch passes, get open. Like, separation wasn't even really there. That, to me, was what pretty shocking, too. Is like, I didn't think that the caliber of athletes should have matched up for what Georgia typically produces. And so, granted, you're right. It does feel like now the tides are turning on people going to other schools. We might see some of this fun stuff going forward.
Yeah, because that's going to be the commentary in the conversation as well. Like, because Alabama's not even in this conversation, but that's going to be a part of the commentary. But Jarvis, piggybacking on what Jay said, and even a question that I have for you, when you look at what Glenn Schumann did, what he schemed up to start this game, and what he did or didn't scheme up for the second half of the game, part one of my question is, what did you think about the first scheme and then the follow-up strategy? And part two, this is going back to what Jay said. I don't think we've ever had a conversation about questioning the heart of this Georgia defense and whether or not they can get their soul snatched. I'm questioning it tonight.
Ooh, oh, wow. Oh, goodness gracious.
Right.
For me, I think that to start this game, I think that game plan was pretty much spot on because you saw Jalen Walker getting up in there. He was getting him on the line of scrimmage, and he was standing up, and he was coming as well. It was one play where Jalen Walker got touched by at least three different guys, and he put pressure on Riley Leonard. So that just goes to show you like what this dude is capable of. Atlanta Falcons, I appreciate y'all. Just go ahead and get the man. Like, stop playing around and go and make that happen. But anyway, that's personal stuff. But I think, in the first half, I thought it was fine. You just saw the turnovers is what killed Georgia in the first half, right? But in that second half, it was something different. Something changed, right? Like they started going back to what had been Georgia's weakness, and that's on the edge. You start seeing them getting out on the edge. You saw Price come in, Jeremiah Love, he was dealing with his issues and having the flu-like symptoms and everything like that. So Price kind of took over, and he's a guy, we know how fast he is. That dude was able to get out there. And if you didn't come with those right run fits like they did, like Georgia didn't do in the second half, that's what you get. You get Riley Leonard saying, it was third and short, fourth and short, third and four, fourth and four. It didn't matter. Like Riley Leonard, everybody in that stadium knew that Riley Leonard was going to get the football. Because I'm sitting here, I'm like, yep, Riley about to get it. What y'all going to do? And they just couldn't stop it.
Which I never thought that was a conversation that we were going to be having. I never thought it was going to be a conversation where, honestly, and I know I keep saying it, but that's because I'm shocked. That's because I'm accustomed to the second half of this game being the first half of a game for Georgia and the first half of this game being the second half of this game for Georgia. But Jay, when you look back, maybe even at a handful of plays from the defensive side of the ball and what the players, not so much even Schumann, but just a handful of plays that you look back at, tell me what those are for you where you're like, yeah, if that play would have been executed, even outside of the penalties, maybe this could have been a different game as well.
Honestly, if you really look at, kind of Jarvis pointed this out, when Riley Leonard started to scramble, you knew that he was going to be the one to have the ball. And no matter what, he make a little move here, a little dip there, a little cut here, and there was always a lane ready for him to go. They did that trick play here at the end, here in the fourth quarter, and it was like an end around. And I looked at that, I'm like, typically Georgia has somebody in the backfield ready for that, and they're going to go hit the dude, trip him up, and he didn't work. No, as that game kept going on, more and more plays just slowly materialized for Notre Dame, and they literally just picked you apart like slowly and meticulously. There wasn't a whole bunch of large plays for the most part. I mean, Riley Leonard had that long run, but for the most part, all their longest pass of the game was 14 yards. It was just doom, light stuff, hand the ball off, quick runs. Like Riley Leonard's 32-yard run was the longest run for the team, of course, but the next was 8 yards.
Yeah.
They were not just hitting you with a whole bunch of explosive plays. It's just they kept finding ways to get first downs. They kept finding ways to move the ball forward. That's all it was. They controlled the entire game. And then when you look at the turnovers, I mean, those two lost fumbles, those feel like as each one came out, one deflated Georgia, and then the next one just put the nail in the coffin for them on how the game was going to go. Because that second fumble, that hurt. That really hurt. And you started to see in the way they played, it was then Notre Dame started going back. It's like slow. Marcus Freeman and them had the best game plan for this one. And I'm just, like I said, I'm still surprised they were able to execute it that easily.
Yeah. And I think too, just kind of going back to the penalties, for example, I felt like there were moments in time as well where I just didn't see a Kirby Smart disciplined team, if you will. There were just moments where I was like, I don't understand. So I'm gonna let you jump in, Jay, because
because you just called out something that got me that it grinded my gears. So fourth down, they're gonna punt, so they fake and they bring all these people out there. Why did Kirby Smart allow his players to go out there in a timely manner? Why didn't he slow play his players out there substituting? Because the ref immediately ran to the ball and said, you got to wait for them to sub. He could have made a couple of different adjustments in there of, we're going to send this big guy out there, keep shifting everybody back, and just go slow. Instead, they get there with 5 seconds left and still jump off sides. You knew what was coming. You knew what they were going to do. That play right there, I was like, what are we doing, guys? Go slow. Just slowly trot a guy out there. Let the last guy go to the offensive line as slow as possible and make them call a timeout. Make it go to 0. You could have done that. That would have probably helped at least a little bit more momentum. But you going out there and then the dude with 5 seconds, like you jump and you know they're going to fake it. You jump. It was like the lack of discipline got me. I'm like, what are we doing? That to me was on Kirby. Because he knew. He even looked at Marcus Freeman and was like, I got to be able to change. It's like, cool. I'm glad you recognize it. Now go ahead and take your time like most smart teams do. Just go slow. It's like Shane Beamer and Brent Bielema. Them battling back and forth on those subs. Hey, you know, they just go out there trying guys real slow. Get to about 1, call timeout. You never sub late when you have a quick offense. You always get your subs in early. That way they're forced to get their players out in a timely manner. But if you do it like Notre Dame just did in this last possession, nah, Georgia, like I said, bring a big dude out there and go slow. That's all you had to do.
And to kind of add to that, man, like get your guys together just real quick as they're running out on the field. Like, hey guys, hold what you got, hold your water. I can hear my coach, you know, in my head as they were running out on the field. I was like, hold your water, hold what you got.
Hold. Don't laugh.
Size, come on, man. Like, because when you have to understand the situation, and when you have a coach that normally is doing that, right? Making sure guys understand what's about to happen. Hey guys, we have to be able to sub. So I need you guys to hold your water, hold your water, hold your water. And I felt like Kirby just didn't do that. And in that moment, because I knew if they got that first down, I was like, man, this game is over with, because, you know, Riley Leonard said, I'm putting the rock in my hand, coach. You know, go ahead and give me
on my back.
Give me me.
Yeah.
Get on my back, guys. I got you. Get on back here.
And that's exactly what happened.
Which is so interesting, because we usually have that one we usually see that one situation where there's a player, whether it's offensively or defensively for Georgia, where when we are having a post-game show, we're saying so-and-so put this team on their back. And it could be anybody. I mean, we've said everyone from Jalen Walker to Michael Williams to even a Dan Jackson at points in this season, where they have literally snatched a win out of the jaws of that opponent. And I just was kind of surprised that there was nobody on either side that was able to just say, okay, fine. You know what? It looks like I'm just going to have to take this game over somehow, some way, forget the schemes, forget the strategy. I'm going to just go out there and I'm going to just play my game. I'm going to play dogs football, and I'm going to will this team back in. And that's why I was saying, Jarvis, when I mentioned, you know, not seeing the heart we're accustomed to and kind of feeling like the dogs got their soul snatched. That's what it meant to me, because I never saw that guy come by and at least say, if we lose, we're going out in a blaze of smoke. Never saw that. I didn't feel like I did.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part, right? Because, you know, me, I've always talked about, you know, Jay, like on the Bulldogs, you know, on the show, on the postcast during the regular season, I used to always talk about Michael moments. And we used to talk about, like, okay, is he gonna have that moment? Is this the game that he's gonna be able to step up and prove to NFL scouts that, hey, I'm that guy. I need y'all to take me in the first round. And sometimes it just didn't come. And you would think in a moment like this, I feel like Jalen Walker was there to start the game for sure. But
at least
he
to start,
by himself. And then I never forget, like, you know, I'm glad you brought up Dan Jackson. For Dan Jackson to come down and just miss a tackle like that, like, because most of the time when Dan Jackson come down here, he gonna put you on your back and he gonna make that tackle. And, you know, and for him to miss that open field tackle like that, it just goes to show you that Georgia was outmatched. They were outmatched, and people need to start to get in their minds that can happen, right? Because, you know, with Bulldogs, with the SEC and the SEC lore and the back-to-back national championships, and people arguing that they probably should have been in the playoff last year and they probably would have won it, you know, you want to keep it funky.
Real talk.
You know, so it just goes to show that, you know, these teams are coming now that they got opportunity to get into the playoff. You know, it's just things are going to have to be adjusted from here on out, because Georgia is always going to have that talent. But guess what? Some of those guys aren't going to go to Georgia. They're going to go to Notre Dame. They're going to go to Texas. You know, they're going to they're gonna go out there and it's gonna be game by game. It's gonna be you can be beat like for real, almost like in the NFL now.
Yeah, and there was a missed opportunity as well. Kind of it's hate to like take the knife and kind of twist it, but this was a missed opportunity for Georgia as well to really kind of say to everybody, yeah, you know what? You left us out last year. We're going to show you that you should have allowed us to be in this playoff last year because we would have been the champions. And everybody was kind of waiting for that moment and that opportunity to happen. And I felt like that would have been good for the program, for the SEC to just kind of quiet all those detractors. But to me, low key, it just kind of gave them confirmation of all the questions that they've been having for this Georgia team throughout the season, which also puts questions at the foot of Kirby Smart to say, where does this Georgia program go next? We'll talk about that on the other side. This episode of our Georgia Squadcast, our Georgia Squad show, rather, is brought to you by Game Time. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. Remember the excitement of past playoff games, and it makes you really excited to make new memories as well with the updated format and all these extra teams involved. So Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets for those upcoming playoff games. So, of course, Game Time Picks for me, I actually use them for concerts. Sometimes I like to decide last minute which concert I'm going to go to or if I'm going to go to one at all. So it really gives you a great opportunity to make some last minute picks, great values. You can even take a look at your seats in and around the venue. And the super deal in particular stands out because it's the best value for the event, where the seat, you can view it before you buy, and the app shows you the total cost up front with no surprise fees. And of course, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee give you complete peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So in country Athens, Clark County, Kirby Smart's going to have some explaining to do when he returns.
Didn't even sound right.
Don't have some explaining to do.
That's so hard for you to do.
I know. So difficult. It's like asking the New Orleans girl to have a NOLA accent. Doesn't work. But
Yes.
that said, Jarvis, Jay, forgive us for our little extra there. But,
I'm with you.
but I mean, honestly, Kirby has some explaining to do. And right now, of course, they're still kind of in a cool off period. So he hasn't gotten through completely the post-game presser. If he does, of course, we'll give some reaction there to some of his comments. But ultimately, it does really kind of, and I don't want to sound dramatic, Jarvis, but I feel like this game kind of puts him in a situation where he's got to go back to the drawing board and kind of think about how he wants to reset to prepare this Georgia program and this team for exactly what you and Jay mentioned, which is competition that is coming from all points and all directions within the college football world.
Oh, absolutely. This is, and that means getting out on the recruiting trail and recruiting your guys to make sure, they don't leave, because, Nitro Tuggle had jumped in the portal. He was out there. He was gone. He was shot them deuces. But, hey, some conversations happen, some NIL magically appears somewhere, you never know. And people change their mind and get up out the portal. So, the guy, I am just so fascinated. Can I just say this? I'm so fascinated that college football players have negotiating power. That is
I love it.
Amazing.
I love it too.
It is so great because I remember the days where coaches used to hold that little quote unquote 4-year scholarship over your head and say, hey, you go in within conference, you got to sit out a year. So good luck. So you're going to have to figure it out here. So I think, with the way the college football landscape has changed, I feel like Kirby needs to understand that, and for me, just personally, just watching this team, because I know he has so much talent that has gone to the NFL on the defensive side of the football. And the offensive linemen, they genuinely have had at least one or two prospects that are draftable. But I feel like comes up a little short at the quarterback position.
I would agree. You know
what I'm saying? Like, it just seems you're willing to get a guy just to get it done.
Right.
You're not,
But Jarvis, can I just say this real quick?
Sure.
That has been, and of course, we're always doing 2 and 3 things as media professionals here, and people are always texting us, DMing us, and even in the comments saying, what happened? What is going on the offensive side of the ball? And my answer kept being, Georgia is happy being a defensive juggernaut, but doesn't seem to value the importance of being an offensive juggernaut as well. You can't get away with just a solid offense these days anymore, not even in the SEC, if we're being honest, right? I just feel like they don't have the guns. And someone even asked me, of course, about like a guy like Julian Lewis. And how do you just let that guy go walking out of the state of Georgia?
Yeah.
And think about this, Jay. You got, and I'm going to call it lucky, that Stetson Bennett IV caught fire 2 seasons in a row, because nobody ever expected Stetson to be that guy that he became, right? Carson Beck, you thought he was actually going to be better than he was, but then if you really kind of looked at it, he was maybe just above average, maybe a little bit more hyped. So to me, we haven't really seen that guy, right? That guy on the offensive side of the ball who, whether they did it with their legs or whether they did it with their arm or maybe a little bit of both, like Riley Leonard, just straight up took over a game tonight. I don't think Georgia's seen that. And for me, that's one of the places where Kirby Smart has to make some changes in his mindset and his approach to the QB1 position and even QB2. And Jarvis, can I say the D word?
Absolutely.
There are no good damn dogs in a wide receiver core. There are no good damn dogs in that wide receiver core.
I promise you, I thought you were about to go somewhere else, T.
Right. Well, hey,
I'm in the chapel at the arena, man.
I feel like Kirby Smart's gonna be walking around the streets of Georgia asking, "Hey, y'all got any more than walk-ons? Hey, I can need one of them walk-ons. I got to have me a walk-on." Because I'm telling you, it's the most fascinating thing that needs to be studied.
Yes.
That 5-star quarterbacks do not make it at Georgia. I don't get it. From Jacob Eason to Jake Fromm to Justin Fields, right? We're going down the line of it all the way up to now. Who Brock Vandegrift, right? You're going down the line of quarterbacks that have come in that were 5 stars and they just do not make it there at Georgia. In which, to your right, the key thing that I've seen about Georgia is they want to maintain being a defensive juggernaut, which I understand. Look, they just lost to a defensive guy, Marcus Freeman. The defensive dudes seem to always find a way to shut up a lot of the offensive guys. So that's kind of like where you see with Texas is they're trying to make sure they have a really good defense with the creative offense. And Georgia was able to find a way of shutting down that offense with their defense, right? They understood the quarterback was, okay, we know how to rattle him enough and we're going to win this game.
Yeah.
But Georgia's not produced themselves a quarterback that can go out there besides Stetson Bennett, put the team on his back. So for real, he's going to walk around asking about, them walk-ons, man, because he needs another one. I got to have it. It's the only way you can break the curse of whatever the heck is happening at the University of Georgia. I mean, you lost Dylan Raiola, who flips and goes to Nebraska. And honestly, he kind of looks pretty good. Not going to lie. He would have been really nice to have. You got, Jaden Rashada? Isn't he on the roster right now as a 5-star quarterback?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't he just kind of kicking it over there as a 5-star quarterback? I mean, he played last year at Arizona State, in which now Arizona State looked really good this past season when he's gone. But he's played college football. We're not seeing Rashada. Is he not ready yet? Right. Where is the issue here when it comes to developing quarterbacks? And it's been going on for years. It ain't just Bobo. It's even before him, right? Tom Munkin's similar situation.
Well,
what are we doing?
Let me stop you right there, Jay. I got to give Todd Monken credit. I feel like Todd Monken.
No, he deserves it. It's just 5-star quarterbacks is wild that no one's been successful in Georgia under the Kirby Smart era.
Come on now, Stetson Bennett caught some lightning that nobody could have ever imagined that
Stetson Bennett was elite at understanding who he was and realized that, you know what, I'm better than what y'all saying I am. Walked out there, pulled his pants up and started cooking folks the second season. But the first year, he did everything you needed by not making mistakes.
Yeah.
That was who you got out of Stetson Bennett year 1. And that defense carried it. Year 2, he was like, this defense is elite. I'm good. Let me go ahead and have a little YOLO action. Let me just go do some stuff. And he did it. Like he did it really good. Like he showed, no, I'm actually pretty good. But at the same time, he was in college football for how many years? I mean, that was like year like 14, 17, 19, whatever. He had been around for a bit. But the good thing is that he recognized the confidence and he leveraged that really good defense that was right behind him. But we have not seen that from any other quarterbacks that have a rating of 4.5 stars plus. I don't get it. It needs to be studied. Somebody needs to figure out who put the hex out there, who put the voodoo. Did somebody make somebody mad in New Orleans? Do I need to hurt? Is there a relationship that Kirby Smart's got going on that we don't know about? With a New Orleans, I'm just asking. I'm asking questions because I need to understand how.
I'm gonna give you an answer. But here's the thing: when it comes to Justin Fields' situation specifically, like they don't know how to handle those guys, right?
Agreed.
Because they tried to sell us in the spring when Jake Fromm and Justin Fields were in the same quarterback room. They tried to sell us that on being a quarterback competition. But in the spring game, you never had Justin Fields throw the football. Nope. Ever. And then after the spring practice was over with, you start hearing leaks of, he doesn't understand the offense. He doesn't know how to throw the football. He can't grasp all of the second and third reads. And then he magically goes to Ohio State and throws for 50 touchdowns?
Yeah. And remember that like 5 or 6 in one game in a college football playoff situation, which was BCS at the time.
So I think the answer to your question, the study, I feel like, I've never been a guy, about master's and PhD level, but oh my gosh, I could probably write a PhD, get my PhD on why Georgia quarterbacks, those big boy recruits specifically, don't go there. Oh yeah, Cam Newton. Mark Rick said that he need to play tight end.
Yep. You want a Heisman Trophy big guy like that?
Tight end. The guy that went and took Auburn to a national championship by his damn self.
Literally, like the roster had like no NFL dudes on their roster. Like I'm just saying, that's just kind of what it is. Yeah, that's the point. Like, how do you allow that to happen in your house?
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing else you can say. But I do think that's actually an excellent point. But on the same token, in addition to that, I feel like maybe, Jarvis, this team leans into running back you a little too much as well. Meaning like, oh my God, like what if tonight happens? They didn't see, they don't seem to have an answer for that. I think that's another thing where if you are a defensive-minded head coach or a defensive-minded program, it seems like your automatic thought process is, well, our running game is going to be our offense. You're seeing a shift out of that, not just in college football, but hey, at the pro ranks.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think you guys are onto something in terms of how this Georgia program is going to have to really take a look in the mirror and examine how it approaches going after everyone who impacts the passing game besides a tight end.
Yeah, that's going to be the most important thing is they're going to have to go get, we'll see what the quarterback looks like. Like I said, you got 5-star Jaden Rashada sitting there in the room. Still got Gunnar Stockton, unless he decides to portal after this game. I hope not. Hope they don't run him out of the city, but he looks like he has potential to be something.
I can say that right now.
He looks like he has the potential, but you better make sure that Jaden Rashada has the opportunity to go out there and fight for that job too. Keep the competitions there. You need guys to push each other. If there's anything that truly needs to be worked on for Georgia, then wide receiver needs to figure out how to catch the darn ball. That's the one thing, man. Everybody dropping passes. It's been a lot of drop passes in college football this past season. It's been wild, but that was some drops throughout the entire year that made everybody scratch their head like, do these wide receivers hate the coaching staff? Is their wide receiver coach not good? Like, everybody's asking those questions. So that's, to me, you need to start working on a lot of the fundamentals. The trench work needs to get back to the basics with the trenches because, that just was not the game you would have expected against Notre Dame. You would have expected Georgia to push them around a little bit more. Honestly, like I said, everything else on the defense was fine. 203 yards of offense, you're winning. But, Tanitra, you made a great point. Leaning too heavily into RBU may have cost a lot of portions of the game because the running game could not get going. It was either the blockers couldn't make a hole wide enough or the running backs weren't hitting what little gaps that were available. I mean, depending on the all-22 film, which I'm going to get my hands on and I'm going to watch it in a couple of days, I need to understand which one was it. Was there no holes or was the backs missing it? But you can't lean to RBU like that against a team like Notre Dame that likes to play physical. That's all Marcus Freeman is about, toughness. So they got some mirror talk they have to do. Look at the man in the mirror, have some conversations.
And I want to continue that conversation on the other side, because I think there's more, just a little bit more to dig into as it relates to how this program approaches their recruitment of wide receivers. We'll talk about it on the other side. Now, granted, guys, Georgia did have some missteps not of their doing. They couldn't predict that there was going to be no Ray Thomas or Ra Thomas. There's no Kobe Young. Like, those are things where you had guys who definitely contributed and could have contributed on a higher level, but just ultimately weren't available due to off the field issues, right? But let's just talk about the guys who are still there. There were some guys, Dom Lovett, whom, for example, you thought were going to give you way more than you got out of them, right? And Dylan Bell, to me, was a guy who actually maybe on some level gave you a little bit more than maybe you thought you were going to get out of him in the receiving game. And I think the tight ends, especially as the season wore on, for me, they were solid, because I never expected one guy to be Brock Bowers. I was like, as long as the unit can be Brock Bowers, we're good. But for me, Jarvis Jay, I think we got to go back to how they also approach the recruitment of wide receivers and looking at those, because honestly, now where your 5 stars do tend to deliver is a wide receiver. A 5-star wideout coming out of high school, a 4-star wideout, those guys actually tend to live up to their billing. So what does Kirby Smart and company need to do, and to just get back out there on the on the recruiting circuit and say, hey, we know we've got to switch our approach and our thought process and mindset towards that position?
I'm gonna be honest. The one thing that they could probably do to help and alleviate a lot of problems early, hit that portal, baby. There's always a good wide receiver in the transfer portal. And some people are not going to want to hear this, but go get one from a G5. Go get one from a FCS, because if they've put up numbers, they're most likely to translate those numbers up, at least in a portion, than a guy that's been sitting on a roster and ain't never produced nothing. Now, development is still critical, so you're going to still need to get some high school recruits. Unfortunately, this year, I think Georgia may have missed out on the lottery tickets that were all the random wide receivers that were nasty that went into college football, from Jeremiah Smith to Ryan Williams to Cam Coleman. I mean, there was massive amounts of 5-star wide receivers that was just stupid good out of nowhere. You're like, oh, wow, that's crazy. But wide receiver is the one position that is of abundance. You're going to find a bunch of good wide receivers out there because there's so many of them and so many options. Go get you some guys with height. Go get you some guys with enough speed to go with that height, but they gotta have the hands, because that was the problem this year. If you're dropping passes, it does not help anything for you. Was it Carson Beck led the country in drop passes this season? That, to me, that tells you that you have an institutional issue you need to work on. And so as long as this staff recognizes that and starts to evaluate their wide receivers based upon their hand capabilities,
that's a good call.
Go hit that portal. Go find you some of these G5 dudes that have hands. I promise you they'll be able to catch. Trey Harris is a great example at Ole Miss. He was fantastic this year. The dude can catch. Came from LA Tech. Do it. That's your best bet.
What about you, Jarvis?
And for me, I feel like this is a being prepared type situation, because they hit that portal. They got Kobe Young, they got London Humphreys, and they got Dom Lovett, the previous year from Mizzou, and I thought coming in he was going to be that guy to kind of be 1,000-yard wide receiver, because shoot, man. You remember Terrence Edwards, Jay?
Oh yes.
That's the last time they had 1,000-yard receiver at Georgia.
Yes.
Well, because it's been spread around so much. It's just you just had so much talent, had so much more talent, which, to be honest, you would prefer to be able to have 3 dudes with 500 yards and 4 dudes with 700 yards. You would love to have that. But man, if you ain't had 1,000-yarder and woo,
it's been a while.
You got to have a dude that you just say, you know what, throw the ball to me. Get on my back, guys. Just throw the ball up there. I'm going to go get it. You need a dude that can handle contention.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I thought Kobe Young coming into this season, we talked about this on Atlanta Football Party. As far as during the spring, coming out of the spring, I was like, Kobe Young can be that red zone threat, a guy you can throw that back shoulder throw instead of throwing it to Lawson Lucky. Fourth down. I'm just like, man, what is going on here? Like Mike Bobo, I was like, bro, I don't know. You a little shaky this game. I've been a Mike Bobo defender from time to time throughout the season, but oh my gosh. That type of stuff, you're depending on Lawson Lucky. Like T mentioned, they were non-existent pretty much for the most part through early on in the season. Then Carson Beck started to get some momentum. They got Oscar Dipp started getting those guys involved and everything like that, and they end up being pretty solid, to wrap up the season. But yeah, like when you lose a guy like Kobe Young, who is sure-handed, who you can count on, in those clutch moments when you're down in the red zone, when there's some 50-50 balls that have to be thrown up there. He can count on him to go get those. Yeah, it's time. So, yeah, they have to hit the portal again because they hit it last year, Jay. It's just a matter of those guys have to come through. You have to hit on them when you go that route.
Yeah.
Or and a big wide tight end.
Well, yeah, you could do that too. Yeah. But, I was thinking too, like, there are two things, and I hope this doesn't sound too cliche-ish, but or no pun intended, but I feel like you also got to get that dog, like dog after dog after dog. So like if your dog goes down, Rara Thomas, or if your dog goes down, Kobe Young, then there's another one and another one and another one. Because everybody, even if they didn't come in 5-star, they think of themselves that way. They think of themselves as future NFL wide receivers, and they're going to be ready to play like that. I felt like we talked a lot about depth and how certainly Georgia is known for having depth, especially when we think about in the trenches, right? But I don't know necessarily if we saw that kind of depth, even in the running back room, right? Because we were seeing things from Branson Robinson, the little freshman, I'm drawing a blank for his name, but obviously you got him, you got Trevor 18, you had depth.
Yeah, Nate Frazier.
Right, Nate Frazier. Thank you so much, Jay.
Nate was really good.
You had depth in the wide receiver room, right? Because that Nate Frazier was a beast. So I felt like we go back to you set yourself up real well to be running back. So that if Trevor Etienne went down, which he ended up going down for a couple games, you were good. Where was that for the wide?
Cass Jones too, like.
Oh my God! Yes, he was clutch. Cass Jones was clutch. But where was that depth of that dog who could come in and who could clean up and get you 100 yards if that's what you needed out of one receiver? Like, where was that guy? So I think that's kind of important as well. As much as Georgia loves to look at depth at certain other positions, why don't you look at depth at that skill position? Because that's becoming, just as critical. And I'll say this, and then I want to switch gears, but you even look at the NFL draft from 2024, and a lot of people questioned it, but you look at like a Rome Odunze, a Malik Neighbors, a Marvin Harrison, those all three, well, okay, not Malik Neighbors, he ain't have a quarterback, but the other two teams, those franchises said, hey,
you'll produce them.
Right. He gonna get one though this coming season. But Caleb Williams, you got a quarterback, right? You got a franchise guy. Kyler Murray, you got a franchise guy. So let's go out and get them some franchise receivers. The reason I'm saying that in the translation is the NFL is putting a premium on wide receivers. They understand the importance of making sure if you've got that quarterback, get him the ball. But even in the case of the New York Giants, Malik Neighbors talked about that in the 1-2 games the Giants actually won. It was him that was kind of helping that quarterback along to will that team across the finish line and across the end zone. So I just wanted to kind of go back there and say, yeah, I do think they need to kind of reset their mindset on how they approach the wide receiver position. But for you guys, what are some of the other things that you see in terms of maybe not just what you saw in this game, but maybe even what you saw in Gunnar Stockton's game against Georgia Tech, where you're saying, did you do enough to prove that you should be the starter next season? Or do you think it's going to, and part B, is this going to be a real competition between him and Jaden Rashada if Jaden stays?
Well, I'll go ahead and start on this one. So the answer to your initial question, I felt like Gunnar was being put in a position just based off the narrative to be the starter next year before this game was even played. And I felt like the way he came out and played, that just confirmed or justified those thoughts and feels for Georgia, not me, for the Georgia higher ups, whether it be Kirby or Mike Bobo, and just the conversations about Gunner, just like, oh yeah, they just got fired up. I'm like, yeah, they got fired up. They lost their starting quarterback. So, yeah, I'm going to get fired up on defense because guess what? I need that fired up because I don't know what he's going to bring to the table. So, when he came in SEC championship game,
Yes, I'm sorry, SEC championship game. Sorry, put back out there. Texas.
Yeah. So, when he came into the game, you saw the feels and the thoughts and like, oh, all right, so we got to take it to another level now because we don't know what Stockton's going to bring to the table. Now, some guys will say, "Hey, we knew that he was going to come in and do that." Yeah, that's what you're supposed to say about your teammate. But I think that Gunner is going to be the starter for Georgia. I don't think it's going to be a real competition, to answer your question, T. I'd be interested to see what Jaden Rashada does as far as, does he jump in the portal? Does he have a conversation, or does he wait till, the window opens up in the spring? So I'd be interested to see if he's still around going into the summer, because I don't know what a quarterback can do to take Gunner Stockton's spot right now.
Yeah, that's going to be the tough part too. It's Stockton was able to walk in there, do the Texas game, showed a lot of heart in the SEC championship game. Sure. And then in this one, he wasn't awful. He just couldn't get people to catch some of the passes, and just some things didn't work out perfectly. But to even add to that, though, DeAndre Swift and Holyfield were the last two running backs to get 1,000 yards in a season. You had two running backs did that. And before that, you had Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel. I was there at the Rose Bowl when they did that comeback against Oklahoma. And so you have running backs, like I said, RBU, you've got a lot of running backs that have put up 1,000 yards, but you didn't do that in the last few years. You've been able to stack talent on talent, but Jarvis, you made the best point at the beginning. This transfer portal, NIL, kids are recognizing, you know what? Let me go make some bread here because I may not go pro, and let me start now. Let me go somewhere where I have a great opportunity to start now. The talent spreads out. You can't stack talent on talent on talent. You need to find a dude that says, get on my back and I'm going to carry you everywhere. And they don't have a single player that makes you feel that way. Brock Bowers was your guy the last time. He had 900 yards in the season. But you ain't seen 1,000 yards since 2003. That, to me, is like, well, who's the go-to? It typically feels good to say, oh, we can spread the ball around to everybody. But if you're spreading the ball around and the ball keeps getting dropped, you still need that one sure-handed person where you can throw it to them and they just go, boom, catch it, and you ain't have to worry about it. That's what Ole Miss had with Trey Harris. You need someone like that. And, man, and if anything to add to it, the offensive line, man, I don't know. It just did not feel right in that game. It did not feel like they were making the holes. It did not feel like they can get the moves. Either they just got really big and really slow, or they just did not get strong and just got big. It's one of the two, and that's the thing that they're going to have to work on.
Fast, Jay.
I know Notre Dame is fast. Notre Dame is fast. Notre Dame is fast. And that's the thing that people sleep on, is that they're not only strong, but they're also fast. Right. They're strong and fast. They were able to do both, something you don't get very often. You don't see very often. So, yeah, Kirby's going to have to go back to the drawing board now, man. He's at that Nick Saban spot where things were kind of getting iffy, where things were kind of a little slow. He's going to have to reinvent him. He's going to have to reinvent himself. That's exactly what you got to do. Hey, get you a mobile quarterback. Yes. Get your defense a little bit faster, maybe a little bit leaner, but faster, to where you're getting to plays and stopping them a lot faster. They're going to have to do something to help because, yes, the SEC is so defensive heavy. Like, I think of the top 10 teams in the country in defense efficiency, about 8 of them were SEC teams. So you're going into defensive gauntlets. You're playing defensive coordinators that are NFL caliber guys that the NFL are trying to steal daily. So you're going to have to play that chess match right. The best way to do it is to reinvent yourself and start a trend that other teams can't stop. Notre Dame just gave you the blueprint. Go do what they did.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You saw the blueprint. Actually, you saw the blueprint beat you, and you saw the opportunity where you barely beat the blueprint several times this season. So that should give you, that should be what the thing. And we all know Kirby Smart is going to be up every night until. But that should keep Kirby Smart up at night, because those are realistic expectations, as you guys mentioned, as people start to kind of look at, or teams and programs start to look at, okay, got a shot at this. All I need to do is get in that top 12. And once I get in, it's on. All I need to do is get in the dance. And you're starting to see, even in Arizona State, who wasn't able to pull it off against Texas, but they got in the dance. You see a Notre Dame team that got in the dance against the number 2 team and made them pay. So I do think that there's some things that he needs to go back to the drawing board, and definitely, it's going to be an interesting off season for Kirby Smart and that University of Georgia program. But listen, before we wrap up, obviously, we would be remiss if we did not send our thoughts and prayers to everyone in the New Orleans metro area, obviously, with the terrorist attack that caused the Sugar Bowl game to be shifted to tonight, caused our post-game show to be shifted as well. To those who lost loved ones, we definitely send our condolences. And for those who were injured and are in critical condition, certainly our thoughts and prayers for them for a speedy recovery. And just so you all know, New Orleans is still that city. My hometown is still strong, and we love you guys, and we appreciate everything that everybody did to make the city safe again. For Jarvis Davis and Jay Smith, I'm Tenitra Batiste. Check out Jarvis on our Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast, and check out Jay on our Locked On Oklahoma podcast. Thanks for joining the Locked On Georgia Squad show. Until next time.